Fender Japan produced some of the most unique and captivating guitars that have ever been seen in the Big F's long storied history. Now, I don't want to touch too much on the history of Fender Japan because we've actually done a video that you can click above my head to give you a little bit more insight into what goes on there. But what I want to do in this particular video is focus on a range that I've already said, the Hybrid 2. With me today is the Fender Hybrid 2 Jazzmaster in Royal Blue and the Stratocaster in US Blonde. Now, the aim of these guitars, while not anything particularly new with the Fender range, it is one of their most welcome, and that's to combine vintage aesthetic and kind of vintage feel with a lot more modern appointments to suit modern players, with the quality of Japanese produced guitars. So let's take a deeper look into these guitars, starting with the one on my lap, the Jazzmaster. For a lot of people, the Jazzmaster is their favourite Fender model. Certainly for me, it is quite high up on that tier list. Now, not only because it looks absolutely amazing, I think this shape is just super cool, but also I think it encapsulates some of those really iconic Fender tones all in the one guitar. I also just love the trem as well to live my Kevin Shields fantasy, of course, from My Bloody Valentine. Now, if you're looking to buy a Fender Jazzmaster, you've got a couple of choices you can go for. You can either go for the American-made Vintage 2 range, which of course goes all the way to sort of make those guitars as close to spec-wise, feel-wise, and look-wise as they originally were back in the 60s. Or you can go for a Player Series or a Performer Series. Now, the Player Series being the Mexican equivalent and Performer being the first line into the American range. Both of those obviously are great guitars, but they do simplify on the Jazzmaster format, which some players may like, but some feel it may take it away from what makes the Jazzmaster a Jazzmaster. And where the Japanese Hybrid 2 range sits is definitely somewhere right in the middle of both of those mission statements. So to explain that in a bit more detail, looking at this guitar, you know, we have the iconic big soap bar pickups on there. We have the iconic trem, which is, I think, an absolute essential when it comes to Jazzmasters. And of course, that offset shape. But where things have changed with this guitar particularly is actually the removal of the rhythm circuit that is quite common on a lot of other Jazzmasters. This of course has left some room to move the three-way pickup selector just above there. Now, Fender have done this before on their first iteration of the American Pro series, but it's really cool to see it back on this guitar as well, especially for anybody who maybe didn't use any of those buttons on the top of the Jazzmaster. You would actually see a lot of people putting a bit of tape over that switch because sometimes they'd be playing, they'd end up switching it and their tone would drastically change and they wouldn't know, whereas obviously this is a bit more kind of Les Paul positioned where people are going to be a bit more familiar with it. Keeping with the body as well, one of the other changes has been to swap out the more kind of classic vintage style bridge with a Mustang bridge here. Now, that's a pretty common mod that you would see across the board, and certainly on Fender's American Pro 2 series, you will see those as well. But certainly for anyone who plays, you know, anything remotely hard or kind of strums, you know, kind of bigger chords, or just like to attack the guitar a little bit more, the vintage style saddles, your strings would occasionally pop off, and obviously in a clutch situation, you don't want that happening. So the deeper grooves on the Mustang bridge there, absolutely fantastic feature on these guitars. Much like the Pro 2, the Hybrid 2 has got 22 narrow tall frets and a 9.5 radius, kind of sitting right in the middle of that Fender feel that a lot of people do like. It's a modern C shape, so again, really comfy on your hand. You have a rosewood board on there, and it's also the standard 25.5-inch scale length. So super familiar Fender feeling, like kind of modern as well. It's not going to be that super rounded sort of vintage feel. Moving up the guitar though, the tuners have actually been replaced with these vintage style locking tuners. Now, combination with the trim, I think is an absolute no-brainer, especially if obviously you're going absolutely crazy on that thing. And also the vintage aesthetic as well. You're not kind of sacrificing the look of the guitar for anything with like massive gears. These are quite discreet. All the Hybrid 2 guitars also have custom voiced pickups to suit these particular models as well. You'll hear in our sound demos, I kind of go through all of the different positions. And today I am going through a Fender Princeton Reverb with a D&M drive for a little bit of, you know, kind of crunch when I need it. Shout out to That Pedal Show. Also have a GHS 3 Series delay as well, just to add a little bit of colour. And I did use an Electro Harmonix freeze pedal right at the start just to kind of solo over as well. Moving on to the Strat, it does actually share quite a few features with the Jazzmaster as well, so I don't really need to go too much into spec. It still has the same scale length, the same radius, the same neck shape, so you know, they're going to feel pretty similar other than the difference in body shape and sound. Something I forgot to mention with the Jazzmaster is actually both bodies are Alder with mapled necks there. Obviously the Strat going for a maple board and the Jazzmaster going for the rosewood board, which are super classic combinations that you'll see on a lot of Fender guitars, but it's cool to see that they've stuck to obviously the kind of classic vintage sort of, you know, wood choices and aesthetic across both guitars. Some very welcome features on the Strat obviously being the vintage locking tuners. So if you're going to be using that trem at all, you can sort of be safe in knowing that your tuning is going to be okay, especially if you're doing any absolute wild dive bombs on it. The tone knob as well has actually been routed to the bridge as opposed to the middle and the neck. The middle does a combination of both of the neck and the middle pickups, and the one right at the rear there just does our bridge pickup. Now again, nothing new that hasn't been seen on Fender guitars, but certainly for a lot of people they do want to kind of tame the super spikiness of a bridge single coil. So again, without having to do a mod or anything, it's just a really welcome feature. So as expected for me, both of these guitars are an absolute joy to play, but in all honesty, I don't think there has been a Fender Japanese guitar that I've not been really impressed with. Like certainly both of these met all of the expectations that I've had from playing them over the years. But of course, as always, what do you think? Let us know down in the comments. Do you own a Fender Japanese guitar? Have you tried any before? Do let us know what your experiences is, and always when you're down there, give us a like and a subscribe. It really does help the channel, and of course, for every single like on this video, I will combine 2 guitars to create a hybrid that you've never seen before. But until then, I've been Kieran, and these have been the Fender Japanese Hybrid 2 guitars. Have a great day.